bud. Hey, Forrest. See you up there. Mountain biking has never been better, but we've really had to fight and claw to get the trail networks we've had. And that's been on the shoulders of people who have really done the hard work. We shouldn't take that for granted, but we can build upon that. We are on Galbraith Mountain in Bellingham, Washington. We're driving up to do a little digging. Galbraith is a tree farm. It's surrounded on 3 sides by neighborhoods. Total about 3,000 acres of working forest. Real dense. It's got a little over 70 miles of trail total. So we're going to the cedar dust zone, which was harvested 5 years ago. If you want to do what we're doing today, you need to have a strong partnership and a strong relationship with the land manager and the landowner. What's up, dudes?
Hey, bud.
Yo. What do you guys got for me? What's the plan? What do we want to work on?
Let's fix some jumps better, right?
All right, let's fix some jumps. I'm down for that.
Cedar dust represents the combined effort of all the mountain biking trail builders and riders in town coming together to build a place to rally around and focus on progression of riding.
They came in here and logged this area. It gave us the space to go ahead and put 4 lines and a climbing trail in a pretty small area, so it's pretty dense as far as the amount of trail that we have in this little space, and that's what we've taken advantage of with the clear cuts here.
Yeah, just out here digging. I've been riding here since I was 14 years old and all these trails were illegal. Previously, you're doing it by hand. It's a little sketchy, you usually have less people. And so things were built like in ways that hurt people. Having this be legal really helps because we can build it safer.
I think we're seeing this next generation of riders here who are teenagers, 13, 14, 15-year-olds hitting these, tricking them. It's pretty amazing to see these days. It really feels like the golden era for our sport right now. You've got flow trails and tech trails, and you got downhill directional trails, and you've got climbing trails, and you've got all these things. Well, that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. Mountain biking effectively started in the 80s. We were a new user group. We didn't really have trails built for biking necessarily, so we typically rode on hiking trails or trails built for other users. It was the Wild West. We would ride these trails, though, that had technical features in them. It was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. Then you rode a nollie out, and you're like, and you pull it back together. You're like, whoo! Yes, and you're high-fiving your buddies and stoked that you made it out and you didn't kill yourself. We've had to build the infrastructure we wanted to have to ride our bikes. These hiking trails aren't really designed for biking. So we started Build Trail based on the fact that we wanted to ride down these trails, carry flow, and add some features and ladders.
Ooh, that is abrupt.
And something that actually was more interesting and frankly fun. Back in the day, you would hike in, you would build your trail, and then you would basically open the entrance and the exit like in the dark of the night, and then you'd walk away from it, and then people would start riding. It was really a don't ask, don't tell sort of thing. It's not the right way to do it. We were just building trails that were fun to ride. The North Fork is an area east of Bellingham, and there was a huge trail building contingency out there. I used to build trails out there.
The North Fork became a stomping ground for a lot of innovative design and ideas of what mountain biking should be. The expectation of trail building out there was to do things that you'd never really have the opportunity to in other legitimate landscapes.
We knew that we didn't have permission to be doing what we were doing. We also had no way to work with that land manager. When you're building in that unsanctioned gray zone, You don't know, like, what's the long term of this? Is this trail gonna be here for 10 years or 20 years? Or is it gonna be, is it gonna be ripped out in 2 years?
The state's cracking down on the way people use and sometimes abuse public lands.
Conservation crews are now ripping apart mountain bike trails in Whatcom County. KOMO4's Denise Whitaker explains the trails are illegal.
They see this as a fantastic opportunity, and I see this as a government employee as a $2.1 million lawsuit that we will need to foot the bill for.
Just as you cannot add on to your house without a permit, you can't do it here in the forest.
So there's liabilities to the state we're trying to address here. There's environmental issues we're trying to address here.
Mountain biker Matt Shelton helped build these trails.
These structures were put in place to help mitigate any negative impact on the landscape, but in the same regard, they are all illegitimate.
He says the whole time, they knew this day would come.
Mining is very important for Chisholm. It has been the lifeblood of our area for a very long time. You would be hard-pressed to find a business that is not somehow connected to the mining industry. We are in the heart of what's called the Iron Range, which spans a part of northern Minnesota, and Chisholm is often called the heartbeat of the Iron Range because we're right in the center.
The Iron Range is an important part of the American story. It's one of the most mining-centric parts of our nation. There's 5 active iron ore mines around us. These mines built America, and they helped construct the tallest skyscrapers that we see in New York. They helped build the infrastructure and the roads that we drive on. They helped us win 2 world wars. It's an important place in America that more people should know about.
The mining industry does fluctuate. When the mining industry is at a low, you will see layoffs.
When mining left in the 60s and 70s, when they were complete mining redhead, half the population of the town went down. These industries have a big impact, and when they leave, they have a big impact as well.
We don't want to forget mining. It has been the bedrock of our area, and we're so grateful for that. But we realize the need for more economic drivers, things that will carry us into the future when mining is obsolete.
My name is Pete Caro. I'm an environmental engineer. When I moved back in 2001, I was expecting that there'd be a little more trail access. There were ATV trails around, and there always have been in the mine dumps, but there wasn't much in the way of formal trails or legal trails. In fact, there weren't any. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the man-made mountain terrain that we have here on the Iron Range and think, I want to ride that.
You look at northern Minnesota, it's a relatively flat landscape. There's always been discussion among the local community of the potential we have here for mountain biking. And that's because they'd go out and adventure and see these amazing man-made and machine-made landscapes. And we knew that there's potential there, but it was off limits.
All of this land was off limits to people for so long, but people have been going into the pits since they were closed off. Was it illegal technically? Yes, but people did it.
We personally never got caught. I think others were, and in some instances been ticketed by conservation officers before. You know, you invest sweat equity in trying to build trails, and the fence could get reconstructed the next week, and all of a sudden that trail was off limits again. You didn't want to go off limits. The Iron Range Off-Road Cyclists is our local mountain bike club. It was formed out of a group of people who were passionate about mountain biking. We thought we'd be stronger speaking with one voice and working together to advocate for mountain biking. That brought us to initiating those discussions with the landowners. And that was really the beginning of legalizing trails on former mine lands.
The first time I heard about any sort of mountain bike trails was 7 or 8 years ago. We had a friend who was part of the local mountain bike club, and he had mentioned that they were thinking about building trails behind the Minnesota Discovery Center. And here is this opportunity for us as community members to experience something amazing.
The vision was destination quality, single track, purpose-built for mountain biking. We realized early on that we needed to create partnerships. The city, the landowner, the mountain bike club, the mine inspectors. There were a lot of stakeholders that we realized needed to have a seat at the table. In a meeting where we were talking about this project, one of the attendees said, "Well, that's a really neat idea, but it's illegal." That was when the issue of the mine pit fencing came to light. It became clear to us that the legislation as it was written was going to prohibit us from being able to construct the bike park inside of the fence line. It seemed like an insurmountable task. Now we've got to change the state law to make this go forward. That's been on the books since 1950. What are the chances?
North Fork was a really good part of my life.
Come on, guys. High fives amongst yourselves.
I had poured 3 years of my heart and soul into that. So, yeah, it was sad. It was sad. I felt like we were losing one of the best trail networks in Washington State. Probably one of the best trail networks in the United States.
This place is just unbelievable. 22,000 volunteer hours.
I'm really gonna miss it a lot.
It wasn't just a place we went to visit and recreate. It was something that we cared a lot for. It felt like home to us. It was a welcoming place for trail building. I think it's extremely important to understand where you're recreating, whose land it is, and also how to progress your agenda without alienating the landowner.
Thank you. So when the North Fork was closed, what I realized is that partnership is so critical. And trying to get that person to come to the table and form that partnership is the difficult part. It really focused me on advocating for more legal access, forming relationships with those land managers, with other user groups. We need somebody who's like on the inside of these decisions. At the time, there was a sort of more cross-country oriented group, the WIMPs, and then there was the more like downhill free ride, shuttle oriented group, which was the Whatcom Trails Co-op. We sort of realized that having two different advocacy groups in Whatcom County at the time didn't really make sense. We needed to have one group, everyone rowing in the same direction and advocating for biking, regardless of what style of biking it was. We changed the name to the WMBC, a true coalition of people who were advocating for cycling here in Whatcom County. And that was a big transformation for us.
Galbraith is the linchpin of sort of the mountain bike community here.
Mountain bikes have been up there since the early 90s. The owner at the time had an agreement with the mountain bikers to have biking up there. But there was never any permanent protection. That arrangement could have ended at any time.
Our relationship on Galbraith was always tenuous. The eye-opener for us was when the owner at the time, they lost the mountain. They basically forfeited it to another company. They did not want to own Galbraith.
I think a lot of land managers specific to mountain biking are always afraid of liability. Anybody who's in commercial forestry would see this like serpentine nest of trails all over the mountain, and it would freak them out. Janicki Logging was managing the forestry for the owner since about 2011.
First and foremost, it's a tree farm. You know, I don't build trails. I build logging roads. I do tree farming. When we first started, we had a lot of issues. We were up here harvesting trees. There was bikers everywhere.
Initially, we didn't have any contact with them, and it was kind of a gong show.
It is different having a trail builder adjacent to your logging operation, and the two of them don't always mesh.
They were doing thinning operations and some clear-cut operations, and people were riding down cedar dust, calling me and saying,
"Hey, there's trees falling all around me, dude."
You know, we don't want bikers actively coming through one of our operations because it's not safe.
Because they're like, well, how am I going to manage this as a working forest? How am I not going to have some mountain bikers sue me? How am I not going to have a tree fall on somebody? Like all these things that lawyers scream, liability.
And so the landowner came to me and said, we really just want to sell this asset. So I started looking around, and I would talk to all the corporate folks, and one guy said to me, well, I'm very interested, but how are you going to get rid of that infestation? I said, what do you mean? He goes, the mountain bikers. Like, you mean they're not rats? He goes, yeah, they're kind of like rats. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of them.
Many people in the community already thought it was publicly owned because it's been so widely used. So many people use it on a regular basis. Property could have been sold to another landowner who would have said, no, we don't want mountain bikers up here.
Mountain bikers were embedded in the mountain. There really was no way to get rid of them without huge PR issues.
I'm seeing these videos that are inspiring thousands of people to get on their bicycles, and I'm looking in my backyard and I'm like, why is there no trails here on the Oregon coast?
Yeah, I've traveled all around the world and ridden a lot of different areas, a lot of different terrain. This place, the dirt and the terrain and everything is just blew my mind. So much potential here, it's ridiculous.
So I went through the channels of connecting with some land managers and started building some trails on private lands. 3 months later, I get a phone call from Carson. He was like, hey, something fell through and curious if your trails are up and running. And I was like, hey, my trails are always up and running, so yeah, I'd love to have you. understanding what mountain biking had done for me, I just feel as though giving that opportunity to this community has value. So I started going to these different nonprofit meetings, and I was always just like, hey, my name's Josh. I'm looking to represent the mountain bike community here, which does not exist, but I would like to make that exist. And all of a sudden, after a year and a half of going to these meetings, I had the floor. They gave me then opportunity to talk to our district ranger, and she said, I would love you and your nonprofit to advocate for these mountain bike trails. She mentioned a nonprofit, which I did not have. So Marty Weishart and I, good friends, we decided to create Tillamook Off-Road Trail Alliance. The mission of Torrida is to bring wellness to our community.
We started off with a ranger that was very passionate about the project and recreation, the forest in general. And it became just this beautiful back and forth collaborative process where we got to know the ranger got to know us, and it just fueled so much stoke in us.
And when our old district ranger left, it certainly changed the entire feel.
That's when communication between us and the Forest Service really started to unravel. We weren't getting updates on when we'd be able to build. There was going to be problems going forward with this new ranger and this trail network.
I was introduced to the trail proposal probably within the first couple of weeks of being here. It was the major project that was going on, and this was one component of a much, much larger project. And I understand anytime that you're working with the federal government, there's going to be frustrations. And yes, they were frustrated, and yes, it was my fault. And I tried to explain that it is part of our process. There are things that we have to do. It's hard for somebody to say, well, we're just building a trail. It's not as simple as building a trail. The process to getting to the decision to build the trail is what takes us the long time.
So here we are, a very passionate group of people, always like cheerleaders for the process to move forward. You've already put in all this time building these relationships with, these different public officials. To us, it almost felt like we took steps backwards.
And that stoke just got crushed. I couldn't believe it. To hear that some ranger came in and had a different agenda, I couldn't believe it. I had to step away, man. I was just like,
It was crucial for the fence law to be changed, but the pits are dangerous.
We weren't lobbyists, we weren't legislators, we didn't understand how you change a law. When the bill failed to change the mine pit fencing legislation, it felt like the end of the project.
When there was this threat of Galbraith being shut down, it made me realize how fragile the bike trails in this community really were. It kind of opened our eyes that like, hey, this is not a guaranteed right for us to be here on this mountain. Our agreement was only 30 days. They could basically say, in 30 days, you're off the mountain, access is denied. So I reached out to Rob Janicki directly and said, you and I should have a direct relationship here. So I was driving in the truck with Rob one day and haphazardly threw this comment out. It's like, well, Rob, why don't you buy the mountain? 5 or 6 months later, he came back to me and he said,
maybe I should buy this thing. And of course, I didn't have the money or anything. So I started trying to figure out how to finance this. And I met with the mayor of Bellingham at that time.
Basically, Rob's proposal was Galbraith Mountain is a valued asset to this community. It's in our best interest to have a local owner.
I'm willing to look at purchasing the mountain if you're willing to commit to buying a recreational easement that will guarantee access forever. And they both said, we're in.
The conservation easement will protect the mountain from development. It can continue to be used for commercial forestry and logging.
When I looked at buying this tree farm and I saw all of the negative input that I was getting from all the potential buyers, the one thing they didn't know that I knew was the relationship that was available to you through the WMBC. It's very symbiotic. These folks are committed to working with landowners. It's not like just some rogue trail builder that's going on your property that you don't control.
We realize that we are on somebody else's property. It's a dynamic environment.
All of these volunteers come onto my mountain and they build stuff.
We're working today on a trail called SST, and it's kind of a classic here on Galbraith. We're just fixing up some of the jumps because they haven't been worked on in a few years, and hoping to make the trail flow a little better and be more fun.
They're still logging on the mountain, keeps us on our toes a little bit, but it also allows us to sort of reimagine what the mountain can be.
Kind of hang your head and say, well, we gave it a try. It didn't seem like it had a possibility of changing, but we can try it again.
Most people would turn away after being told no. Part of the Iron Range spirit that lives on is that tenacity of never giving up.
Not only was it a passion project of Iron Range off-road cyclists, people in government offices were really willing to go to bat for this and make it happen. So it proved to me the strength of the partnerships that we had in place. It felt like a gigantic victory when the legislation changed that would allow Redhead to go forward.
When the mining bill passed, it was amazing. You know, the sky's the limit. And thankfully they did go back because, you know, we're seeing an incredible transformation of our community because of what happened there with that statute.
When Bill stepped in, it was just an absolute terrible time for somebody to get into a new district with NEPA wildfires. So certainly he had those challenges. You can't blame him for those.
Just because you're a partner and you're a partner that I agree with, doesn't mean that I can change the process to make it go any faster. There has to be some give and take. There has to be some willingness for compromise. But the first key is you have to be willing to work together.
We've educated ourselves as a very young nonprofit. We just got to be understanding and sensitive to the process. Bill has had the opportunity to do his due diligence, learn about what we hope to bring to the community, and he's now a great partner and asset to what's happening here, and we're excited to work with him.
And they're very passionate people. I don't like to be the one that has to hold them back. We've had recent meetings just talking about how we're going to build our future collaboration with them. I believe that we will have a trail system out there.
We all want to get these trails developed as quickly as possible. At this point, we know there will be trails. It's just a matter of when the trails are built.
This feels like one of those moments where just the right people have come together with all the right passions. It's surreal to have the World Cup here. I didn't start to imagine being a part of something like this until probably 8 to 10 years ago. It was such a huge vision. I'm not sure there's a way to kind of recreate the special energy that's happening around here. We have gotten up and found one another and made it happen.
Right now, I kind of wish I were 20 years younger to see what all of this positive impact will have. All of our resources are limited. No one person can make these things happen. It does take a team pulling together.
Mon Towns is a partnership of 10 towns within the proclamation boundary of the forest. And all of these towns have come to the forest, and we've all met together with a memorandum of understanding saying, let's use the economics of the forest to make it work and sustainably grow together.
We're in cooperation with those towns, and now we've taken a regional approach. What is best for each of these individual towns ultimately will be a benefit not only to the region, but I say to the state.
People know what a ride center is around here, people that have never mountain biked in their life. So it's a big deal. IMA is the International Mountain Biking Association, a group of mountain bikers on an international scale. And so their designations are important. It's about trails, most importantly. It's about amenities, the things that mountain bikers want.
I understand about 40 of these ride centers or thereabouts around the world. And so reaching the bronze status was great, but within 13 months, reaching the silver status was a little bit better. Now we're approaching, I understand, about 400 miles of bike trails within the county.
The key to success with these partnerships is listening to the public, listening to your partners, finding those places where you get along.
This is a story that can be told over and over. We're creating an example of partnership that can be replicated no matter where. I think biking will just continue to grow, and I think it'll continue to grow here. I have faith in West Virginia.
So here's what I'm saying, if you come outside this, and then come inside this, and that sets you better up for this next section, because this section is a section where you'll gain a lot of speed because it's flat.
And if I go from
Here, go that way, you're going towards blue steel.
Mountain biking for people here in Bellingham is not really just about biking. Culturally, it's the fabric of who a lot of these people are. For my family, it 100% is more than that. Like, it's given me a whole new family that I hold near and dear.
There are people from other parts of this country that come to this city just to get to ride on this mountain. That's pretty cool.
It feels like we're on vacation, but this is our hometown or our backyard. That was when it really sunk in.
That's one of the wonderful things. It's not all about mountain biking. We love our community. We want to raise our families here. We want to be here, and we want other people to do the same.
Redhead Mountain Bike Park is a former iron ore mine pit that we carved 25 miles of incredible world-class trails out of that were constructed by some of the best builders in the country.
I took my friend for a ride. My friend said, I cannot believe we're in Chisholm, Minnesota.
Our entire lives have changed because of mountain biking. We all share that love of getting outdoors and smiling at the end of a trail and sharing that experience. Our friends have massively grown, our community of people. Just a matter of now getting these trails built so that way we can all enjoy that experience. If this process were to take 15 years, I'm not going anywhere. If this process, takes 20 years, once again, I'm just trying to get mountain biking happening here on the Oregon coast.
We've all kind of grown up in our own islands, right? We've all got these sort of various landscapes on how to deal with the land managers you're working with. And sometimes it's been really easy and sometimes it's been more difficult. Many of us have been able to flourish because we have this really cool population of people that really are dedicated to seeing it through. That's where I think getting our kids involved is really important, because it has been a long, hard fight long before I got involved in this sport. And it's taken a lot of perseverance from organizations like the WMBC. So we're gonna have to keep up. We're gonna have to keep up with trail development and being good partners with our land managers. The fact that we live here so close to the trails and the fact that we just rode from our house to go out on this little quick spin, we're really lucky, super lucky. I don't know if they know how lucky they have it, that's for sure.
Thanks, dude. Thanks, Dad.
Well, you're gonna get a shot somewhere and you'll be like, oh my God. Somewhere down there.
This is gnarly.
Whoa. Sorry, bud.
I told him, hey, I love your fanny. And it was like totally weird. And I was like, your fanny pack. I have the same one. Oh my God. Weird.
Yeah, you probably could. Go for it, Noah.
Yeah, so Eric Brown. Yeah.
My name's Eric Brown. I'm the executive director with the Walking Mountain Bike Coalition, based in Bellingham, Washington, here in Northwest Washington. That sucks. That sucks. Hang on.
So this one I call the Bull Moose. It's a suspended set of handlebars. If you saw a picture of me on Strava this summer with blood dripping down my arm, I've got this baby to thank for that.
I'm off center good.
Biketown's a fun movie that 5 dudes showed up to my house and gonna eat food. And then, what is a Biketown?
And could you guys give us a kiss?
That's
no
problem.
We'll give each other one. Can you guys give us a kiss?
Yeah.
Spark eater.
I just wanted to be
I didn't know. No, I freeze. I'm telling you. That thing comes on and I just freeze.
Cool. Let's cut. Hello, America.